This video will not really cover a whole lot of wrenching or anything, mainly about prepping the ground for new plants to be planted next spring. I did and a few other things that's happening around the garage. I did install a little counter to keep track of roughly how many plants that will need to be ordered. I had issues with my sister's cars, I think car I mentioned earlier, and we ended up waiting for parts here for a long time. During that, my dad's bike died on him and it needed to be rescued and trailered back to the garage. Turned out to be a faulty little connector down here, corroded and full of dirt from the voltage regulator, so that took a while to find it, but at least it was an easy fix. Thought it could be the wiring up to the ignition key. That's a common problem on these bikes. I've had issues on my old bike, but it wasn't the case this time. One of the three-wheelers refused to start one day, and after a while it starts fouling the plugs, but the new plug fixed it. I think there is some issue with the choke circuit here and there. And now the preparation of the ground. I think I've showed it before, the homemade bucket here for flipping over a little piece of soil and getting fresh ground up. That is a good breeding ground for a new forest or planting a little tree in it. And I did the work myself with a small excavator. Might not be super efficient, and it's not really that expensive to hire someone to do it, but they have big machines that tear up the ground a whole lot more. Some of them actually do kind of trenches in the ground and flip a lot of material over. It's sure it gives you a lot of choices where to plant, but you also expose a lot more for undergrowth, and I hope this will, well, there will still be a lot of undergrowth and work with the brush cutter in the future, but hopefully it will be a little bit less doing it this way. I'm not sure about exactly the area, but in the region of between 4 and 5 hectares were gone over like this. Took a couple of days. Had a new tire for the motorcycle that I mounted, so it's ready when I swap to these rims, because I have more wheel sets than I have bikes. So a little rubber wrestling and a few pops. Also opened up the seals on the bearings and added some fresh grease. I've yet to replace a wheel bearing that I know that I have installed from brand new. These street wheels don't see a lot of dirt, so might be a little overkill here. Listen to this. It does not sound good at all. I guess that the crane pump is making noise again. I'll give it a little test run before, but I think there will be more wrenching videos. The little red tractor will be going outside for storage. That also doesn't sound good from the gearbox, so it will just be put in storage. It was put in coolant with antifreeze in it now. I had to flush the system with water. It started quite easily, a little bit of starter fluid. The snowmobile that you can hear was stored in the garage during the summer. This chain cutter, it has a chain that it swings around to clear the growth near the roads, was put in winter storage. And back to the excavator. I took turns doing the brush cutter and the excavator, and then some wrenching. Finally received the parts for my sister's car. These brake shields had almost disintegrated and they are sitting behind the wheel bearings we were replacing, and I don't think that was the entire fault. There is still a singing noise in the car, but at least the rear wheel bearings are good. We also fitted the sensor for the reversing. It has some parking assistance, but it doesn't seem to work even if the sensor that was missing, that was laying inside the bumper, was moved into position. So, well, it's running at least. Next patient, my dad's car had a broken CV joint. Well, not broken, it was still running but making horrific sounds. So, and he is already far behind on mandatory inspections. With the corona they made it possible to postpone it some, but not indefinitely, so he will have to do that. Found that the radiator was loose on the small excavator, but decided it wasn't an emergency to fix it, so did some more work with it. Ended up going with a temporary repair. This rubber mount had broken. Removed it. Helped my dad some more with that CV joint. Back on the excavator I did a temporary solution with a bolt and a little piece of rubber I had laying around the garage for now, until I can get a proper rubber mount for it. Was a little tricky getting it in place, but and I could keep going. Here is the inside view of prepping the ground, and since I had that counter I tried looking at having it on the joystick, but couldn't find a good way for that, so the number is probably not correct, because when talking on the phone or something you get a little distracted, so not to have to push for every little planting point, I chose to dig 4 of them and then push. And then it's a little bit of shaky moving around. The small excavator is not optimal. I was going to replace the coupling on this PTO axle, and there are plenty of videos showing the proper way to do it with a vise or a press, and we just used the swing press. I think that's my dad's favorite tool. And bearings in this joint were busted anyway, so it's gonna be replaced, this coupling or cross joint. I'm not sure the correct term. And the small excavator wants some grease every now and then. And back on digging. It was great weather, so but I don't have the stamina to be out with the brush cutter all day, so did some tanks, some couple of hours with the brush cutter, and then some hours in the excavator on the days here when the weather was good. A bigger excavator with longer reach would be more efficient, but that's what I have at hand, and the big POC line will be used mainly for road constructions these days. Some areas had some branches that needed to be pushed away. More car repair, well, it's just service here, changing the oil, and the Skoda is so nice, even if my niece was not really any help, because it's easy access to the oil filter and drain plug and everything. My sister's car that also needed oil change, the oil filter, was a real hassle to get out. I think it would workshop doing it removes the fuel filter. And some work with the brush cutter. Some areas were quite dense. I think they were missed a little when it was gone over about a decade ago. And I'm making I'm thinning it out quite a lot. A lot of times I think they would want to save more trees, but back to the excavator. I found some suitable rubber mounts to be able to get them into place. I loosened the posts holding the radiator assembly. Still it was tricky getting it in place, and the inner one I looked at not tackling that, but saw that it was cracked and would fail quite soon, I would guess. And here it was hard getting the new nut in place and tightening things up, but not impossible. And then bolting back up the post down at the bottom. It was back at the garage by then. My dad had taken the big excavator for a little test run, cleaning up the area where we tore down that log building. And some of the rocks. It used to be a barn down where the excavator sits now in the old days, so it's foundation remnants of the foundation, so we just put the stones down there, took care of some metal that had been laid there. Also saved a little dresser my sister wanted to throw away as storage in the garage. I found a bit of a leak. I was certain it was the cylinder for the bucket mount, but it looked to be leaking from this coupling here, and so took that apart first to see if it was as simple as some seal here. It's a little tricky with that square fitting, but was eventually able to get it out, and sure enough it was as simple as a sealing washer under here that was damaged. I think it has come undone a tiny bit and caused damage to the sealing washer. So a new sealing washer and bolting it back up. Can you hear the heavy rain? I'm glad we are under a roof now, or we would have stopped work. Used my dad's homemade lift solution to get the dresser upstairs. It will be storage for motorcycle parts that will probably never be used. And another old tractor. This have not seen a lot of love in the last decade, so it's gonna get some fresh oil and seals. New bearings for the PTO shaft arrived. Just used the swing press to mount it. First side went okay. I kind of regret not using a little bit of fine sandpaper on the brand new one, because that took a bit too much hammering for comfort. We did try adding a little bit of pressing action and giving it a few taps, but it didn't really help. So luckily my dad is very good with the swing press, so he ended up tackling that. We brought in some wood to help get a little better connection. And hopefully we got it in place properly without doing any damage. The plastic protection on the shaft had been damaged at some point, so it was almost impossible to extend it and retract it, so some of the damaged plastic was removed and it could be reassembled with the plastic housing above it. An old thin cutting board was laying around, and then some duct tape to seal up the hole to reduce any dust getting in there. Had a tree that was starting to fall over the road, and also very close to the junction box or extra box we had were required to install for the internet connection that will hopefully be installed before this winter. So I talked to the landowner down here that we were gonna remove it, and asked if he wanted to come get the tree or not, but he said we could take care of it. It was rotten also, so very little value in it. Next time the big excavator was started, we checked for any leaks and it seems to hold up, so this was an easy fix.
Ja.
Need more of them.
Ja, han körde låsningen.
I'm sure there are still a few leaks on this machine, but nothing I will tackle right now. And my dad's car was back in the garage after the inspection because they complained about the part of the suspension, the joint down here, that was quite bad, so more parts needed to be replaced. I would love to have a car lift, but I don't think that's gonna happen. And there are plenty of better wrenching videos when it comes to repairing cars. I'm not gonna do anything in depth on them, so. But it took some struggling to getting things to fit there, with the rubber mounts being stiff and everything. It was also a joint for the steering on the other side that was starting to go bad, not an emergency, but he had ordered that also. A small excavator was used to do a little bit of a drainage ditch near the garage where we have had some water pooling up. Hopefully this will reduce that. More wrenching videos will follow. This is just an update that I'm keeping busy. I will never be without work to do, that's for sure. Whether it's the forest itself or all the old machines I keep around, there is always something to do.